I walked the campsite, noticing a few things here and there, and then I said, "Boys, I hate to spoil your party, but you know as well as I do that there ain't been a grizz in these parts for over 20 years. One of the boys, Shorty Parker, he and I never got on too well. He spits on the ground and says, 'About time for one to come back, Jessup, looks like.' A few of the others laughed, and one of them said, 'Mighty big fella.' 'Mighty hungry, too,' says Shorty, and the others nodded their heads, like those tiny little dolls in the car's back window. Yep, they had it all worked out. I figured that kind of talk didn't deserve a reply. True ignorance is like an icy mountain peak, unconquerable. Old Smoky Bennett took me aside and said he didn't understand it either, a bear showing up after all these years, but he swept the devastated campsite with his hand and said, "There's a preponderance of evidence here, Wiley. You can't deny it. We can't afford to take a chance." I saw what I saw. I rubbed my chin and said, "Yeah, Smoky, it's that preponderance that's bothering me. I never seen so much doggone evidence in my life. But where the hell's the bear?" He had no reply to that. We went our separate ways. Those boys got their rifles and scopes and prepared to track themselves a world record trophy man-killer grizz. I wished Shorty Parker good luck, and he spit on the ground and said, "Gonna get me a nice rug out of this, Jessup. Hell, by the size of him, I'll have me a wall-to-wall." I didn't answer the man. There is no good reply to a fool except goodbye. You got to separate yourself from those boys, far as you can. He ain't about to get a rug unless he visits a carpet barn and shoots some swashes. Old Shorty will be walking on bare wood getting splinters in his toes till the day he dies. I tell you, they don't call him Shorty for nothing, and it ain't on account of his size. Having eliminated a bear as a suspect, I had only one trail to follow, of the two-legged variety, the camper. To do that, I had to backtrack, so often the case. I felt I would have me a talk with the man's kin, this unfortunate fellow who'd been eaten by the bear. The others, thinking he'd been devoured, had more or less forgotten all about him. His name was Morris Gutstein, and he didn't have any children, just a wife. After I met her, I figured that had been family enough for him. No man of any consequence would take a chance on breeding with the likes of her. Maybe you've heard of some people described as hatchet-faced. I believe I recall one man once referring to his wife as my old battle axe. Morris Gutstein's partner in life was perhaps a cudgel. Those experts who believe our faces are a picture of our character could write a book on her. A horror story, believe you me. Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, put her right in there. She was a classic. The thought of being hitched to her gave me the chills. I had to wonder about the effect it had had on Morris. I introduced myself, and she started going at me before I could take a seat. She was angry, upset, a condition that seemed to suit her like rain in Seattle. "You have to find Morris, Mr. Jessup. I know he's out there. He's hurt. He's lost. Of course he's lost. Morris couldn't find his way to the post office without me. He used to get lost on his way to the garage. I told him this was a foolhardy notion going camping out in the middle of nowhere with all the bugs and mosquitoes. Yick! I don't know whatever got into him. He's never been camping in his life. He doesn't even eat Girl Scout cookies. But he wouldn't listen to me. No, Morris wouldn't listen. And do you see the result? Do you see where this has gotten him? Do you see?" Tell the truth, I think I did see. It was dawning on me real good, but I kept that to myself. That was easy, as she never did stop talking. It seemed like she was somehow able to speak without breathing, a trick I never could manage. Although listening to her, I found myself holding my breath, kind of like the way you might do if it was all of a sudden come upon an active volcano. It was hard to tell if she was sad about losing her husband or happy that he'd gotten into trouble like she'd predicted. A little of both, more of the latter, I think. I asked her if she had a photograph of him, and while she was getting one, I asked her what he had done for a living. "You can't mean it," she said. "You've never heard of Morris? I'm speechless. It's impossible. What kind of man are you? Where is your refinement? He's an internationally renowned conductor. Where have you been living, Mr. Jessup? In a cave?" I was trying to imagine her speechless, and nearly missed the question. "Close," I said. "A remote cabin. It doesn't matter. You should have heard of him. You obviously have no appreciation for culture. Shame on you. Morris has conducted symphonies around the world. Russia, China, Australia, Zimbabwe, they've all heard of Morris. There's no excuse. I'm very sorry, I said. Casey Jones was the only conductor I've ever heard of, and he wasn't really a conductor, he was an engineer. So I couldn't even count him. I didn't mention him anyway. I didn't figure she'd have much interest in Casey Jones, no matter where he was on the train. Apologies are useless, she said, scowling, which was easy for her. Never mind. Just find him. He's an artist, a great artist, a genius, and he's lost without me. I do everything for him. I've sacrificed my life for him. And now, Morris, this is the thanks I get. This is my reward. Oh, I will absolutely kill the man when he comes home, she said. And if you recall what I said about her appearance, you wouldn't have given a red cent for the poor guy's chances. Tangling with a bear was nothing compared to locking up with her. And if you stop to consider that, you might begin to think he wouldn't be coming home, dead or alive. You have to find him, Mr. Jessup, she said. Get helicopters, the National Guard, the Chicago Symphony, whatever it takes. He's a great artist and he won't survive a day without... Oh, Morris, she stamped her foot. Sometimes he makes me so mad. I think Morris was due for a spanking, or worse. Morris had been a bad boy. I said, Mrs. Grustein, we'll do everything possible, conduct a thorough search, but I have to tell you, from the look of things, everything points to the conclusion that your husband was eaten by a bear. We'll deal with that after you find him, she said.